Hello, Barcelona. Can you hear me? Right. So I hope you had a good lunch and ready for this session. I know post-lunch sessions are somewhat tough. I'll try to keep you engaging. So I think before I start, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask questions then and there. Then we'll answer those and we can proceed. So I'll skip this. So today's lineup is this. Basically, we'll have a quick intro into the lab session, what basically trying to cover from this lab session. And then we'll provide an intro into WSO2 API Manager. This will help the new users and for any users, current users, to understand how the product is doing and where we are basically going and things like that. And we'll take a use case, real world use case, and try to apply AI in different stages of API lifecycle. And then we'll talk about B2B API consumption. This is a new feature which we are adding to the product stack. And then we'll talk about how all these AI services are line up with the architecture, how you can basically take our architecture and evolve with your all use cases. And then we'll talk about future AI-powered capabilities that we are bringing in. And we have more stuff coming up there. And then if you look at today, agentic AI is one of the hot topics today. So we'll try to come up with what our plans are on this aspect as well. And finally, the key takeaways and next steps for you to try the WSO2 API Manager and get started from there. Okay, then let's get started on this. Right. So why AI in API management? So if you take AI is transforming how APIs are built, managed, and secured, and even the consumption side of things as well. So it automates repetitive tasks and improving efficiency then and there. And on top of all these cases, it brings enhanced governance and compliance so that you can make sure your organization is having future-proof and ready APIs along the ecosystem. From this lab session, the objective is to demonstrate AI capabilities that we have in the API Manager. We'll take one use case and apply each and every AI capability that we have into different stages of the API lifecycle. And then, so if I talk about the use case, so we're looking into the modernizing the online store to overcome the legacy challenges that are there in the legacy systems. So let's get started on this. I'll start with the quick intro into WSO2 API Manager. So WSO2 API Manager is a 100% open source full lifecycle management solution. We take API security as a key aspect. You can basically secure your APIs in different methodologies like O2, API keys, MTLS. Likewise, we have different authentication mechanism, and on top of those, you can apply authorization, and there are other access policies you can apply to those cases as well. And when it comes to different portals in API Manager, we have three main portals there. One is the API Publisher, which is where the API providers come and create APIs for the consumption. You can add documentation, you can add policies, and you can do various things there. And then we have the admin portal. That's where the admins basically do all these administrative stuff. and then the developer portal for the external consumers to come and discover all these APIs. And then if you look at API monetization, that's one key part in today's world. If you want to monetize APIs, you will have to have this capability. And all these capabilities are there, and along with that, we have insightful analytics and observability. Analytics will help you to understand how your APIs are doing, and then observability will help you to understand the performance issues, latencies, and all these things related to basically troubleshooting your APIs. And then the key factor is about WSO2 API Manager is that this is fully customized in a way. If you want to have extension points in different stages of the API Manager lifecycle, those are there. So the idea is, if you want to have more enhanced capabilities, if you want to improve something, the extension points will help you to basically do all these various extensions. Right. Right. So these are our API Manager offerings. So if you look at WSO2 API Manager, this is our software version. So for cloud offering, we are introducing Bijira by WSO2. This is a new offering that we offer. So we used to offer Choreo for API management, but now we are switching into Bijira by WSO2 for two reasons. Number one is that for any customers who are looking for API management, we want to offer more scoped, more focus level API management offering. That's why we are bringing Bijira. So this is basically powered by Choreo, built on top of Choreo. So that's one angle. And then the second one is that with AI coming into picture, all the things, all the domains are having AI capabilities. So we want to take AI capabilities inbuilt and enhance user experience then and there. So we are basically focusing Bijira with more AI native and cloud native level so that we can add more value to the API management landscape by doing various AI integrations as possible, as much as possible. So that's why we are bringing more focus offering as Bijira. So you can do various things, and we have our own way of improving things in the APM landscape. So we have a separate session on Bijira on the third day of the conference. I invite you to come and discover more about these offerings, what are the features and how the deployment models are there, and you can get more understanding from having to come into that session. So if I talk about the WSO2 API Manager software version, so we have a WSO2 API control plane, which basically you can control multiple gateways that we have. So starting with the WSO2 Kubernetes gateway, previously known as WSO2 APK. So this is a Kubernetes native lightweight Envoy-based gateway offering that we have. Then we have the immutable gateway, which is an offline mode immutable edge gateway. And then the third gateway is about our universal gateway, which has inbuilt mediation and other protocol supports as well. And now we are introducing federated gateways, which we are coming along with AWS Gateway and Solars. So Solars was there in the previous cases as well, but we are having introduced these things under federated gateways, and we will be expanding these federated gateways to support more and more third-party gateways like Apigee, Kong, MuleSoft likewise. So that the idea is from the central API control plane, you can govern all these gateways and you have central visibility for all your API gateways. So we have another lab session after this session, so it will cover more details regarding to these gateway federations stuff. So if you look at WSO2 API Manager, you can run it in anywhere, including Kubernetes, VMs, or any deployment options that are there available. You can run it anywhere with that. And if you look at more details about the gateways that we have, so these gateways are there for specific reasons. So starting with the unified gateway, it is mainly for the centralized API management with advanced mediations. So this is mainly based on the Synapse mediations, where you can have more mediations that are with the gateway. You can expand the mediation logics, and then for complex API transformations, security, and governance, for these capabilities, you can use the universal gateway. So the key difference here is that you can do more advanced routing, transformation, and enrichments because underlying infrastructure is there with the Synapse mediations. And then we have centralized security access control, O2, OIDC, SAML likewise. And then if you look at the Kubernetes gateway, which is Envoy-based Kubernetes gateway, which is more Kubernetes friendly. We have first class support to the Kubernetes ecosystem where you can define APIs using CRDs, or known as custom resource definitions. In a declarative way, you can define APIs. So this is based on CNCF Kubernetes Gateway API. So this replaces the ingress resource. So more and more vendors are moving into the Kubernetes Gateway from the ingress resource due to the limitations that are there in the ingress resource as well. So one key advantage here is that with all these capabilities that are there in Kubernetes, you can do dynamic scaling, auto scaling, and basically auto healing is also there, which basically helps you to run things smoothly without any disruptions to the production workloads. And then the third one is the immutable gateway, which is a lightweight and decentralized gateway. If you want to group set of APIs and have a separate deployment, this is the gateway to be used. So this is best for the microservices and IoT and offline deployments with independent gateways. So the idea is, so this is more immutable. So basically you can create a gateway from your APIs, then whenever you want to update the gateway, you have to rebuild the gateway. So it's like a Docker image. So basically this runs on a VM, Kubernetes, or anywhere. And this is more microservice friendly. You can run this gateway alongside with the service itself, and edge ready and optimized for computing and IoT stuff. Yeah, so that's about the gateway types that we have. So any questions on this? Right. Right, so this is basically a reference architecture. So this is coming from the Gartner side. They have a reference architecture, and on top of that, we have aligned what we have at WSO2 API Manager. So if I start from here, from the top left, starting with the identity and access management, we have a key management or even key management server, or even you can plug IS as a key manager. And then we have other third-party key managements out-of-the-box support like Okta, Ping Federate, Auth0, Keycloak. Likewise, there are so many third-party key management supports is there. And then we have the API control plane, where it consists developer portal, admin portal, and the publisher portal. So as I mentioned earlier, like the publisher portal is where you basically create APIs, enrich APIs with the documentation, add policies, and then do the lifecycle management, and finally at the testing stage. And then admin level, you can create rate limiting policies, you can onboard gateways, you can onboard key managers, and also you can team developer portal as well. And also workflow approvals are also handled from the admin console. And then the last one is the API developer portal. That's where the external developers or the application developers come and discover APIs. So they can go through the API, understand how the API is working, and then also look at the documentation. They can also check out the SDKs and basically generate keys, and they can finally embed the keys in their application. So this is how the flow works when it comes to the portals. And then on top of that, we have the control plane APIs, which basically powers all these portals. And then we have the developer tools, VS Code plugins, extensions for basically if you are looking into deploying APIs in Kubernetes. So this VS Code plugin will help you to basically define your API. And then we have the CTL tool, where you can use this to create CI/CD pipelines and basically promote your APIs from one environment to another one. So basically you can plug the CI/CD repos, and then even to deploy to different gateways as well. So when it comes to gateways, so based on these terminology, I have basically grouped whatever the gateways we have into different levels. So the enterprise API gateway, for that we have the universal gateway. For Ingress API gateway, we have the Kubernetes gateway. As lightweight gateways, we have Kubernetes gateway and the immutable gateway. As egress and AI gateway, we have the Kubernetes gateway and the universal gateway. So this part will be covered from the next session, where I will talk more about the egress and AI stuff related to AI gateway. And then, so the idea here is that from these gateways, you can connect to multiple services, multiple different external services like LLMs, likewise. So on top of these, we have API logging, analytics, and observability powered from these stacks. So the products in the stack like Elk, Jaeger, Zipkin, Grafana, Prometheus, and Choreo Analytics, and also we have integrations with Mosif as well. So you can basically plug these and get analytics and observability data. And as I mentioned earlier, like the product is fully customizable, and we have extension points for these as well. If you want to plug into any third-party analytics solution or a observability or even a log-based solution, the platform or the API solution is able to cater that as well. So that's about this architecture. Right, so I'll quickly introduce the Bijira new APM SaaS offering that we have. So starting with this, basically we looked deeply into the enhancing user experience. So basically we developed a visual mapping UI where you can map your service with the API proxy. You can basically drag and drop your proxy definitions, proxy resources with the service so that you can get a more visual mapping. So on top of that, you can apply different policies for different resources. It can apply at the resource level or even at the API level. And then we have the unified control plane. The main support is to control SaaS data planes and the private data planes. But we are looking into expand this to cater or the control more on-prem data planes as well as federated gateways as well. So although these are available in, like the federated gateways are already available in the on-prem one, but it will take some time to bring that capability into the SaaS offering. And if I talk about AI for APIs, we are doing more improvements related to enhancements related to AI. So we have AI-driven API design assistance, testing, and developer portal theming. So we'll cover some of these from today's session. We'll be doing a hands-on session on this one. And then we have APIs for AI, which we basically talks about AI governance. By just providing a document, you can basically enforce API governance to all your APIs that are there in the system. And then we basically control over your API traffic, which lands across ingress, egress, and AI APIs. So as I mentioned earlier, this is purely built on top of Choreo, and we are basically getting more and more features out of it and more focus toward offering a more unified approach, more enhanced approach for the users who are trying out this offer. Right, so I'll hand over to Natasha to take you from here.
Yes, so we'll be going into the use case that we will be doing today, and then we'll get on with the hands-on session. So the use case. Okay. Sorry. So the business use case is e-commerce platform integration. So the scenario that we're talking about is an online store, a Spanish online store, which manages a large catalog of products, and it's called as Vientomart. So they have from electronics to clothes to groceries and much more. So they have their own website as well as a mobile application. But the inventory management is currently done manually. So they have data inconsistency problem, and they have a challenge of updating product details, which includes the price, the stock across these different channels in real time. So this is a big challenge for the Vientomart, for them to grow as well. So as a solution, Vientomart wants to modernize their inventory management by implementing APIs that can synchronize the products, including the stocks across different platforms. So this will enable them to ensure seamless inventory management across all these channels that we just spoke about. So this is at a very high level what we will be doing. So as I said, Vientomart is an online store. So it has different departments which does product management, inventory management, order management, payment, billing, and much more. And they have their own website, mobile apps, which consumers like us use to purchase different products. And end users are direct consumers like us, but we do also have partners who interact with VN2Mart. So the partners can be suppliers and manufacturers, fulfillment centers, logistics providers, retail partners, and much more. So the focus for today's session is going to be on the inventory management and how they will modernize it using these APIs, using an API that we will create. And as Pubudu explained, we will be using AI to show you the end-to-end API flow. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry for that. And these are the different user personas that we will be using throughout the session. So we have Larry, who is the API owner, who is responsible for designing and implementing APIs. Then we have Emily, who is the API product manager, who is responsible for managing the lifecycle and publishing the API to the developer portal. And so both Larry and Emily are a part of VN2Mart. And then we have David, who is a partner application developer, who would be using these product management APIs to integrate with VN2Mart. So they would discover the API, subscribe to it, and then start using it. And of course, then we have the admin user who will manage the users and the system administration. So this is a high-level solutions diagram that we came up with, which basically shows you different parts that we would cover. So I'll take you through at a very high level. So we have the different user personas here that we just spoke about: the API creator, the product manager, and the app developer. And inside the box, you see the different components of API manager. What Pubudu just explained. So we have the API publisher, and we would be showing how you would create an API, apply the quality of service policies, how would you validate the compliance, deploy the API, and finally publish it to the developer portal. And this is the developer portal or the marketplace. So as a consumer, we would show you how you can come into the developer portal, discover the API that you can use, subscribe to it, test it, and then start consuming it in your actual application. And then we have the API gateway, which is the API runtime, which would actually take in all of your requests. And the API gateway is connected to the product management backend service, which connects with the product database and the inventory system. So this is at a high level how the solution diagram looks like. So do you have any questions on this for us? All right, so we'll start with the API design. So before going into the hands-on session, let me just talk about a few challenges, how API Design Assistant solves it, and the business impact that you will get as an organization. So the challenge is sometimes defining APIs needs technical expertise. So, and non-technical users kind of struggle to design these complex API specifications. So in short, if you're a business user, it's kind of hard for you to design an API. And also defining resources, schemas, and related configuration sometimes take time and is inefficient. And also, let's say you design an API, sometimes refining it and making adjustments to the API require an extensive effort. So we understood all those challenges and we introduced this API design assistance, which solves the problem. So what we do is you can basically prompt your scenario in natural language, and the chat-based API will generate the API for you. And it can also suggest which type of API is suitable for this particular scenario. So it can generate REST, GraphQL, and async APIs. And the API that is designed will be given to you in a structured view. So you can see, okay, the API resources, and you can understand it very easily. And let's say you want to do a few modifications to the API. For example, you need to add a resource or maybe modify an existing resource. You can do it through the API chat itself. Yes, so you can communicate with the API chat, and you can finally design the API the way you want to. So the business impact that an organization would get through this is this will definitely speed up the API design process, because now you would have some sort of template to start with. You can, of course, refine it as you go on by having discussions with your team, but this would be a great starting point. And the other thing is both your technical as well as your non-technical teams can now get together to create and refine APIs. So this is how it looks in the API publisher portal. So I will show this to you in action right away. So I'm logging in to the publisher portal as Larry, who is the API creator. Sorry, my session was timed out. Yeah, so I logged in as the API creator for VNtomart, and you can see a bunch of APIs that are already published. So if you go to create API, you can see that we support creating APIs using different formats. Like you can create REST APIs, SOAP APIs, GraphQL, streaming APIs, and much more. But for today's session, we will be focusing on the AI side of things. So when you go to create API with AI, you can basically put your prompt here. So I already have a prompt that I created before. So just before we get into that, all the hands-on things that we do are on GitHub. So you can get access to this link and you can find step-by-step instructions on how to do it. So go to use case 1. Yeah, so this is the prompt that I have. Yeah, so basically what I'm saying is in VNtomart, we have an old system managing the product inventory, and mostly it's manual. It's outdated, and it needs to be modernized. So we are looking at a way where we can efficiently handle this by managing the product. That includes the name, details, and every attribute of the product, including stocks, as well as to manage the inventory adjustments. So I prompted it, and now it will connect with the AI service, and it will generate like a skeleton of the API for me. Yeah, let me try again. Yes. We are having some technical difficulties. Give us a couple of minutes. I kind of shortened the prompt to see if it can connect with the service. So team, if you do have any questions in the interim, you can ask. But let me try to get this. Yes, so it generated the API. Yeah, apologies for that, but yeah, we had some issues with the network, I guess. So as you can see, it can suggest you the correct type of API as well. So it says REST is suitable to manage your product inventory with CRUD operations. So you can see it generated like a skeleton of an API, including the resources, which I can use as a starting point. So now let's say you want to add one more resource which manages the inventory as well, then you can also include that as another prompt. Yeah, so I'm just prompting to say to include a way to manage inventory adjustments. So ideally, it should give me another resource which will do that. Yes. So see, so you can see that we got another resource. So likewise, depending on the requirement, you can modify and refine the skeleton of your API.
So if you have any questions at any point, just raise your hand and we'll come to you. Okay, if we have a question.
Actually, more than one question, but can we provide templates to the generator to guide him to prepare the response that he's giving?
Okay.
Is it on? Yeah. So basically, in the prompt, you can say the template that you want, and then based on that, it will get a result for you.
Okay, and as for the data, we could provide also schema or structured info that use this.
Yes.
Yeah, that's there.
Yeah.
Okay, and could it be used to enhance or optimize or correct an existing OpenAPI or Async API documentation?
So basically, that's doable, but the idea of this is to basically start from your idea and get an open API for that. But in your case, I think this is doable, but we haven't expanded this capability to cater that requirement, but I guess we can add it there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Okay.
Hi. So is this data we've just sent leaving the API manager? So does it go to an external LLM or does it keep within the installation?
So basically, from API manager, it connects to LLM, which is there in the cloud, and we are not running anything on-prem. So we have a slide to cover that area. We'll talk about more in that.
So yeah, So do we need to train our LLMs to provide the proper specifications when we are asking a particular APIs? So kind of APIs, we have certain specification standards we have to follow, like if it is.
Yeah, so right now this only supports basically coming up with the definition, but we are working on applying governance rules so that you can apply various standards to the open API or the definition so that it aligns with the standards that you have in the organization or maybe particular domain likewise. So any questions on this or anything that we covered so far? Yeah.
Does it also generates the body, for example, for the post request?
Yeah, so
Okay.
probably if you click one of these, so it will generate the relevant body and whatever the information. And if you click on the view source, you can basically get an idea on how the open API looks like. I think maybe it's due to the project, I think it's not clear, but the idea is we have the open API generated. The visualization is based on the Saga UI, which basically takes your open API and visualize it there. Right.
The value of a tool like this is as you feed it more information, it knows your requirements for your organization. As an example, if I have a customer identifier and I call it customer ID, when I generate more and more APIs, it doesn't just give me a random identification. It actually uses what my microservices use. Is this AI model, is it tenanted, and does it also remember my previous prompt? And when we do the governance layer and it applies the schemas, can I feed it existing APIs so it also learns my naming standards as well as how do I consume APIs?
Yeah, so this stores some context within a cache. For example, Redis is there to cache some of the history of your chat, and it's there. I think when it comes to the customer data, we have to be more careful with that. So in that case, probably rather than, so I think for trying out purposes, you can do this, but in real production scenario, we have to plug it into a LLM or which basically you have more control so that you don't expose anything. So the architecture is basically supporting that, where you can connect your own LLM or basically connect to whatever the private LLM that you have.
Any more questions? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. So once you've decided that the API is good to go, you can create the API. And yes, then it's the usual API design process where you can modify the different information like the name, the context, and you can specify a version as well. And then you can select the gateway type which you would want to deploy this API into. So then you create the API and then it will take you to the API overview page. But before that, I'll just go back into the API chat again. So this is just to show you that, as we said, it not only can generate the API for you, but it can tell you the type of the API that you need to use based on the scenario that you have provided as well. So for example, if I need to generate an API to track transport, fleet management at real time, where it can track the vehicles, and there are locations. So ideally, it should be a WebSocket API, so it's not REST. So I just wanted to show you how that suggestion also comes up. So it'll tell you, okay, basically WebSocket is ideal to do this real-time tracking. So now let's go into the API that we created because in this session we will be using that API. So which is the product management API. And as you can see here, this is the API overview page, which includes a brief about the API that we've created. And on your left, you have the different operations that you can do for the API. So we've segregated into develop, deploy, test, and publish. So I'll quickly talk about the things that come under develop. So depending on the type of operation, we've segregated again into API configuration and portal configuration. So API configuration includes all the things that you can do to the API. So for example, if you want to apply security, so by default, all the APIs that are exposed from API Manager uses OAuth2 as security. But if you want to change it, you can just go to the runtime tab and then select the type that you want to. Likewise, all the resources that we have created are given here. So at any point in time, if you want to add or delete an existing resource or modify anything, you can just use this. And then we do have the API definition available as well. So if your team is comfortable in using Swagger to basically develop the API, we have a Swagger editor. And whatever changes that you make on the editor will be reflected on the API as well. And then we come to the endpoints, which is your actual backend service. So in this scenario, it's the product management backend service, which is running on cloud. So why we came here was we wanted to show the different types of endpoints that we support. It can be a REST endpoint, a SOAP endpoint, or you can have dynamic endpoints, or simply if you don't have a backend available, you can mock an implementation of the API of the backend as well. So for this scenario, we do have a service that's already running. So I'm going to copy the endpoint and then put it for both the production endpoint and the sandbox endpoint, and I'll click on save. And then we do have policies as well. So these are the mediations that you can apply on the request flow and the response flow. So you can define policies per resource as well, or you can apply the same policy for the complete API. So we've identified some common policies that are used by a lot of organizations, and we've provided it over here. But of course, if you want to do anything custom, you can build it and import it as well. So for the purpose of the demo, I'm just using a very simple policy, which will log whatever request that is coming in to all the resources. So likewise, you can engage one or more API policies, and then you can simply save it. Then we will go into the rate limiting as well. So it comes under resources. So you can apply rate limiting policies for the complete API or for each resource separately. For the purpose of for this session, I'll be applying a single rate limiting policy for the complete API. And you can select the policy from here. And you need to save the changes that are made. And then once we go into the portal configurations, these are essentially what's visible to the end consumer. So for example, you can put an icon to the API, you can give a description of the API, and also you can control the visibility of the API in the developer portal. So if you want this API only to be seen, by users with a particular role, you can do that access control through the portal configurations. And if you have a lot of APIs, you can always categorize and tag them as well. So when it comes to the API consumer in the developer portal, it's actually easy for them to search the APIs that they need by filtering. And you can, of course, give business information of the API. So whatever that you provide here will be visible to the API consumer as well. Another very interesting feature is adding API documentation. So having good documentation makes your API consumer's life easy. So we do generate an API documentation automatically. But aside from that, if you want to add any other custom documentation in terms of how to use the APIs, different SDKs, you could do that as well. So I'm just adding a summary of this API. And you can add it in different formats. You can provide it inline in Markdown format. You can upload a file or just provide a URL. So I'm going to add it inline. And the content is again provided in GitHub. So I'm just going to paste the content. So if as required, you can do the formatting as well. And then we have applying subscription policies or business plans. So these would be available to the API consumer when they start to subscribe and use the API. So these are the policies that are given by default, but of course you can customize it. So I'm just going to select the gold and the silver policy. Yes. So likewise, you can do any changes and modifications to your API, and then complete the API design process. So this is what we've accomplished so far in the session. So we created an API using AI, and we applied some quality of service policies. So now I'll hand it over to Pubudu to take you through the API governance.
Can you hear me? Right. So I'll start with API governance. I'll quickly run through this. So if you look at right now, people have onboarded more and more APIs, but they haven't followed the best practices, or there can be APIs with different security, different API naming, different versions. Likewise. So the idea of the governance is to make sure that you follow some standard. It can be the organization standard, it can be the department level, or maybe the best practices that you have there that you follow in some case. So if you don't follow these, there can be cases like there can be security vulnerabilities that can arouse due to different reasons. Maybe there can be APIs with security and there can be some APIs without security. So right now, if you look at organizations don't have the access or don't have the visibility into this aspect, they don't have fully control to that. So there can be manual things that are them doing in different stages of the API lifecycle, but on top of these have to be resolved so that you have more control. So but with governance, we basically solve this by automating policies and bringing more standards to the API ecosystem, and we have more approval workflows so that you can do more control to these aspects and have more fully single pane off to all your APIs so that you get more visibility into the system to understand what are your APIs and how they are secured likewise. So if you look at the business point of view, it reduces the overhead, it makes sure that you align with the security and compliancy, and also you get more visibility and control. So if I talk about more into the concepts side of things, so the idea is you have set of rules. So we call this as rule set. Rule set can be basically, it combines multiple rules. This can be API best practices. Likewise, API name can be below 50 characters, or maybe the version should start with simple V or something like that. Then there can be other rule set related to your domain. Maybe for finance APIs, it can be like the rules can be your API should be exposed as HTTPS, and you have to follow the standardized error responses likewise. Then now we have rule sets. Now, in order to apply, you can create a policy. So let's assume we are creating finance policy to apply this to all your finance APIs. So basically, you can give a policy name, and then you can apply to all the APIs in the system, or maybe you can label your APIs and apply to set of APIs. And then you can select multiple rule sets or maybe one rule set to create this policy. And how does it apply here is that in my case, I have 3 APIs: payment, stock market, and travel. So I have the label called finance to 2 of my APIs, and the travel one has a different travel label. So when you create this finance policy and have the label called finance, these two APIs will basically govern from the finance policy. So that's how the architecture is been there. So this is some of the dashboards that we have. We have an admin dashboard for the admins to understand how the entire system works, or how the compliance is there, and whether it's basically adhering to their governance policies. And then we have the publisher level view as well. So the API creator level view, so that the API creator understands the errors and understand what are the violations, and then he can basically figure things out. Right, so before I go there, I'll do a quick demo on this. So we'll have to start with the admin portal. So that's where the admins go and create the policies. So I'll log into admin console. So under admin portal, we have different options like the rate limiting policies, gateways, categories, key managers, LLMs, providers likewise. So we have the governance here. I'll start with the governance. So we can add a rule set first. So these are some of the rule sets that are available there. But I'll create a new rule set. I'll give this rule set name as organization rules. And then these rules can be applied into 3 different types. It can apply to the API definition, which is the Open API or the GraphQL SDL likewise. And then it can apply to API metadata as well. Metadata basically consists of API policies, some of the key metadata like states of the API likewise, and then you can apply these rule set to documentation as well. I'll select the metadata and I'll select the type, whether I apply this to REST API or async API. So in my case, I'll be basically getting some predefined rules. So I have these rules. I'll talk about those rules. So the first rule is to check that security is enabled for all the resources. So there are cases, some APIs are not secured and some are probably the developers have not followed the process. So this rule is to ensure that security is applied to all the resources. And then the Second rule is to make sure that the API should have tags. So we'll make sure the API having tags here. And then the third one is make sure API business owner email is there in the API before we publish or deploy. So likewise, we can create the policy. So this definition or the rule definition is based on spectral. So you can create spectral rules and basically have the copy paste rules here. So I'll create the rules here. So before that, I'll explain, though this is the API YAML, which basically contains all the metadata related to the API of WSO2. This contains ID, name, description, context, whatever the metadata related to the API. So when you go to the publisher, you can download the relevant API project, which consists the, yeah.
Sorry, one question. In what version of API manager is available? Because we have 4.0 and it's not available in that version.
So I talking.
Last one. Okay, thanks. 4.5. Okay.
Yeah, latest. Yeah. So the governance feature comes along with the API Manager latest release, which is 4.5. Right. So basically, from here you can download the API project, which consists of all the metadata related to the API. So then I'll create the rule set here. And then I'll go to the policies. So as I spoke about the policies there, so basically I can give an policy name here, and then I can apply this policy for a particular label, so that the API should have this label. And then I can add a enforcement criteria where I need to apply this policy. So I'll apply this policy at the API deploy level. So I'll make sure to block deployment if the user has not followed any of these rules. So if you put notify, it will just warn you, but it will let you go in. But if I set that to block, it will block the entire API. Right. So I'll.
Can we do in a way that these are the rule set which is mandatory and block it and rest is just one?
Can you come across again? I didn't hear you properly.
Yeah, I'm asking, is it possible that few rule sets are mandatory and rest is warning?
Yeah, so basically you can create policies out of the rule sets, and you can make the policy maybe to have blocked all your APIs or just notify. So that extensibility or that flexibility is there within the platform itself. Right? Yeah. So now I'll select this organization roles that I created. So I'll create the policy. So we have the labels here. You can add any label that you want. You can give a name and description. And then I'll go to the API, and then I'll add a label e-commerce to the API so that my policy applies to this API. So so basically we had 3 rules there. One is to enable security by default, it's there, and other one is to have tags. So I'll add a tag called e-commerce and save it. And then let's skip one of the rules and let's try to deploy here. And when I try to deploy, it says my the API business owner email is missing and it's not proceeding to deploy the API. So I'll have to add the business owner email here. I'll add my email here. Right now, if I go and deploy this, it will allow me to deploy the API to particular gateway. So likewise, we can apply the governance rules for different stages of the API lifecycle. It can be the API creation, deploy, publish, or even API update. So that's how governance works in this scale. So I'll go through the other related stuff into governance. So when it comes to CI/CD, so probably most of you are using our CI/CD tool to do all these various actions without touching the publisher UI or the admin UI likewise. So the idea here is that you can when you have an open API using the CTL, you can create a project here. So the project consists definition, API, YAML, documentation, all the things that are related to the API itself. It contains everything that you need to know about the API. And then on top of that API project, you can apply environment details there. Particular environment can have different configurations. Likewise, you can have different environment based files so that you can inject to different environments. Now the key addition here is that we are introducing a new command for the import to make sure you validate the API project with all your governance policies. So if you have defined your governance policies at the admin level, these policies will make sure that your project is also aligned with all the governance rules that are there. So that's pretty much it about it. Once you are done with the validation of the API project, you can basically promote your API from different environments, from dev to prod. Likewise, you can do various things. So AI governance is one of the key aspects. This is available currently in the Bijira. So I'll quickly go through this without doing any intro into this. So I have logged into the Bijira console. So here we have the admin level governance menu. So here you can see the policies. Then here you can see the rule sets and the documents. So under the document, you can basically import any document that you have. So the idea is maybe organizations have defined different best practices or define different organizational best practices, or maybe the domain specific best practices. So the idea is, I guess nobody ever reads these 200 pages or maybe 10 pages, right? That's the reality. So the idea is to onboard these PDF documents into the policy engine so that you can apply those rule sets to your APIs then and there. So you get more visibility into your APIs by just applying these rules. So I'll create a policy using the documents that are there. I can just give a name, policy check. Right, so you can apply globally there, and I can basically select a document and create a policy there. So we have an admin level console where you can check the compliance of it. So right now this policy check is being violated by the APIs that are there. So same level dashboards are there at the admin level and at the API level as well. So if I go into the project level, also there is a dashboard to understand how the project is doing. And then if I go into a particular API, it basically shows me these resource violations are there. So this is governed by AI. So all these recommendations are coming from the AI side of, where it basically reads your PDF document, apply those policy rule sets to your APIs. So that's how this is being done. So talk more about this in the third day session, which we focus on the Bijira API SaaS offering. So we'll move on to the next item. So this is what we covered on the AI side of things. So far we have basically covered validate compliance. So yeah, so I think we'll go into the deploy and publish. I'll hand over to Natasha. I think we can skip some of these and get this.
Now we will deploy and publish the API. So this is the standard process that we already have. So as you saw, Pubudu already deployed the API after checking for the compliancy of the API. So now I will just publish the same API into the developer portal. Right. So now if you go into the developer portal, you can see the API has been already published. Yeah, so so before this, let me take you through the rest of the slides. So again, we've completed all the steps which comes with the API publisher. So now we go into the API discovery and consumption. So again, we will show you how AI is used in all of this. So when it comes to API discovery, when you have hundreds and thousands of APIs, choosing the correct API becomes very complex. Sometimes, traditional API discovery relies on keyword searches, and sometimes it limits the accuracy and it becomes very complicated. So finding the API that is suitable for your requirement can take a lot of time. So we understood these challenges, and how we tried to solve it with the marketplace assistants was we use AI to try and figure out what's the best API for you. So just like API design, you need to prompt out your requirement, and then based on the APIs that are already published in the developer portal, we will give you the APIs. We would rather recommend you the APIs that you can use in your applications. So with this, we expect that organizations can quickly discover API discovery and select the most appropriate API, which will improve the efficiency. And this also improves the developer experience, because now with AI, we can give you intelligent recommendations. So this is how the API Marketplace Assistant looks like. So now let me log into the developer portal. So if you remember the user personas, the partner app developer was David. So I'm logging in as David. And it will show you all the APIs that are published, and it shows the API that we just created and published as well. So if you go to the right corner, you can see the API Marketplace Assistant. So basically, you need to prompt your requirement. So I'm going into Git and getting the prompt. So what I'm trying to say is we are looking again to modernize an online e-commerce store where we will need to manage products, categories, inventory, and also handle payments. So once we give the prompt based on the APIs given, it should recommend to me a few APIs. Yeah. Let me try it once more. ideally what it would do is, it would basically go through the APIs, and depending on the requirement I have given, it will give you one or more APIs that I could use in my online store. So in this case, it's going to be the product management API that we already created. So if you want to use these APIs in one of your applications, it follows the standard process from here onwards, basically where you need to create a new application and then subscribe to the API using that application. So once you do that, your API will be linked to the application. So an application is already created called Product Management App. So I will go into that application, go into subscriptions, and then right now it doesn't have any APIs. And then I'm going to select the Product Management API and select a business plan and subscribe to it. So going back to the presentation. So up until now, we've covered discovering the API and subscribing to the API. So now we will look at how AI can be used for testing purposes. So the challenges that we identified was sometimes manual testing is time consuming. And if you want to invoke multiple resources sequentially, it can require some level of technical expertise or coding. So how API chat solves these challenges is it allows both technical as well as non-technical users to engage and test APIs using natural language. So this eliminates the need to do manual testing. And you can easily communicate with APIs without coding, even for complex sequences. And this will definitely streamline and simplify the API testing process, where you can get your business users and business teams to also test out these APIs. And this also reduces the development time and effort for your application developers. So this is how the API chat for testing looks like. Again, it's almost the same, where you need to prompt your test scenario, and then depending on what you prompted, we will run the required resources. So let me show you how it would work. So again, we are going back to the applications because we only subscribed to the API using the applications. But if we need to invoke or test out the API, we need to generate keys. So for the application, so that's already done. So I'm going back to my product management API. So there are two ways of testing. Either you can manually test using the API console or using API chat, which we will be focusing on for today. So you go to API chat, and then you need to configure a key, which is essentially the token. So then you can get a test token here. Then you can say, and then you can have multiple variations. You can either invoke all the resources, invoke a single resource, or invoke subsequent resources as well on a flow. So we already have like a testing prompt, which will add 2 products to the product catalog and return those 2 products as well. So that includes testing multiple resources at once. So you can, I think, see it over here, and all these prompts are given on GitHub as well. So you can try this after the session, and you can say execute. So basically, I'm adding a Bluetooth headphone and a smartwatch to the catalog, and I'm trying to retrieve both of them. So you can see it got added. And now I'm going to enter a prompt which will return the products. Return the newly added products. Yeah. So ideally, it would return the products that we added. So you can combine multiple queries together as well, depending on your requirement. So going back again into the slides. So this what we've accomplished so far. We've done the end-to-end API flow where we started from design and we published it to the developer portal, and application developers tested it out as well. So do you have any questions on this for us? Yeah.
Is it possible to save the generated test as a Postman collection or something like that?
So basically right now we don't support that, but I think we can add it to the roadmap so that, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can run through the slides without going to the demos. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll skip these. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next feature we wanted to show you was B2B API management. It's about how you can share an API with multiple partner organizations. So I'm not going to explain the challenges, but basically how we tried to resolve it is we can define different access controls for organizations and user levels. And in this case, VN2Mart will be the parent organization, and they will have different suppliers, manufacturers, retail partners, logistics providers under it as sub-organizations. And the same API can be shared to all these sub-organizations with different policy enforcements. So basically, this is how it would look like if you go into the API. I'll just quickly show it to you. If you go into the API, there's an option for you to share the API only with the current organization, share it with all the organization or specific organizations. So I'm logging into the publisher. So if you go to the same API that we've created, and there's a button for you to share. So as I said, you can share it with all the organization, or you can share it with certain selected organization. So in this case, we have 3 organizations created, one for a retail partner, a logistics provider, and a supplier. So let's say you want to share this API only with your supplier and only with the retail partner. You can select them and then you can apply different policies for each partner organization as well. So what happens is now if you go to the developer portal and if you log in to it as a user from RetailNet, you will be able to see that API. But if you log into the developer portal with Fulfill Hub, which is essentially a fulfillment partner, you will not be able to see the API because we've not shared it with that particular organization. So I think due to the time constraints, I'm not going to show how it works. Yeah, so these are the different partner organizations that we've spoken about, like how you can achieve this scenario end-to-end is given, is documented on GitHub. Yes, there's a question.
I think we can talk about how we onboard organization. Yeah.
Can a user be a part of more than one organization, or just be part of just 2 organizations of one organization?
So you can onboard multiple organizations.
Okay, as a one user.
Sorry?
With one account, you can be part of more than one organization.
Yeah, more than one with different use sets. So if I go to so we have used identity management or the IS server for onboarding organizations. We basically, if you go there, basically you can create different organizations at IS side, Identity Server Manager side, and then you can register those organizations at the API Manager side. So then we link those organizations, and then when you come to the publisher, you basically can see the available organizations, and when you are sharing the API from the publisher side, you can select particular organization and share the API.
So this is in the identity server side. What you need to do is register your organization and keep a track of your organization ID. And once you do that, you need to go into API Manager and then register the same organization with that same organization ID. And after you do that, as we showed, if you go to the publisher, select a particular API, and if you say share, you'll see all the APIs, you'll see all the organizations that are registered.
Yeah, we have one more question.
Yeah.
Will this work with Azure AD object IDs as well?
Yeah, so the idea here is that we basically read the claim call org ID, or you can give a claim ID there. So if there are a particular claim ID to identify the organization, that's doable. So I think in Azure AD, probably there can be claims you can add so that we have that.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is what we've basically covered, all the scenarios. Okay. And the last feature that we are gonna showing you is how you can use AI to theme your developer portal. Again, this is currently available in Bijra, but it will soon come to the software product as well. So once you give a domain, what it can do is it can extract, AI can extract the colors, the fonts, the logos, and the styles from the organization website.
That's probably, we can go to the demo and show it there.
Yeah, and yeah, so this is Bijra, I think you already saw it. And we go to settings, developer portal, and we'll try to get the themes of FC Barcelona. So I select theme with AI, and then it should pick up the logo and all the colors and the fonts and the styles associated with it.
So we have connected this to the hotel network, and there are network issues, and that's why some of the AI calls are getting failed.
Yeah, so I'll try again.
Scroll to. So basically this fetches colors, fonts, and styles that are there, and also the logo. So it has fetched the logo here and applied some of the colors. So you can use the color palette to apply any colors that you want to apply to the developer portal. So we have some organization specific landing pages and API level landing pages. So basically you can customize the developer portal as you want. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll start with the AI service architecture here. So the basic understanding is that so all the AI services that we consume here are deployed with this architecture. So we have several services like API Marketplace service for the marketplace, AI agent solution, and then design assistance service is for the designing stuff, and API chat is for the testing stuff. So these things are deployed in Choreo, and for example, this marketplace service is connecting to LLM, and also it has a vector database connection where it stores some of the API definitions, likewise whatever the required information that it needs. So then all these other services are connecting to LLMs as well. So then we have some gateway functionality there with this authentication, authorization, and some rate limiting. So the idea here is that if you want to write these things within API Manager product, you can go to the AI subscription portal and get a token from there and embed that in the deployment toml. And then whenever you make a request, it will hit this data plane and go into relevant service and get the results for you. So the idea is that similar deployment can be deployed based on your requirement in a Choreo private data plane. Likewise, you can have these services on board with you as well. So right now we are using Asia OpenAI, but I guess if you want to use your keys, that's also possible with this architecture. Right, so I'll talk about future AI powered capabilities. So if you look at the things that we covered, some of these things are missing. So these are required to have end-to-end AI capabilities to cover different stages of API management. So starting with the AI-driven documentation and mocking, which will bring you automated API documentation, and also doing various mocking for the backend functionality. And there can be cases like SDK generations, where based on the user scenario, it should be able to generate relevant SDKs so that you can use in your application development. And also AI-driven insights and analytics also a key thing, where based on your natural language query, it should be able to basically get the relevant insights for your based on the API data that you have. So these are the things that are there. It will come in the future. And one key thing we are targeting is how we can empower APIs with all these agentic AI workflows. So if you look at right now, AI is making huge stuff, and AI agentic workflows are key things. So AI agents will consume more and more tools. And the idea here is that some of these tools are also APIs. So the idea here is that converts some of the existing APIs, or maybe converts APIs into tools, so that the agents can consume these APIs as tools. So the tools can be like read your Gmail, write an email, maybe retrieve some documents likewise. So all these things are APIs mainly. So with this integration, we are basically trying to convert API or set of resources in an API to a tool. And the open API that are there does not support the metadata that are there is very limited, and we have to have more metadata so that AI agents can understand what this API really does. Likewise, we'll have to improve on the metadata. So you have to add more metadata into the tool as well. And then there will be tool marketplace integrations, where we push the tools to the different marketplaces. And then MCP integration is one of the key aspects. So the MCP is about the model context protocol, which basically standardize how application context is passed to the LLM so that it can consume. So these things are these are the things that will come in line soon. So this will be available probably in coming months. And just to conclude, key takeaways, we basically covered how we apply AI stuff into the API lifecycle in different stages of the lifecycle. And then basically we looked at how governance applies on top of these, and how you can improve your efficiency while making sure the organization applies different standards then and there. So next step would be to try this out on API management solutions, and you can try WSO2 API Manager, which runs on anywhere, and we have the cloud offering, which is bichira.dev. You can log in there and just try this out. We have released this as a beta, which we'll be announcing GA in a couple of weeks. So the idea is to try this out. So the backend is based on Choreo. We are fully production ready, but we'll take few weeks to make sure we enhance the user experience more and more better. So you can find all the lab sessions in this URL. We have the Git repository. Yeah, so the upcoming sessions, we'll have another session on the unified management of ingress, egress, and AI gateway, and we'll talk about the federated gateways as well. So it will happen in, I think, 30 minutes time. And then we have other sessions that covers that are there under API management track. So basically these things are happening on the third day. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.